If you're over 60 and you've stopped masturbating, I need you to hear this. You're not just giving up pleasure, you're giving up protection. You may think it's harmless. You may think it doesn't matter anymore. But the truth is, quitting self-intimacy could quietly be damaging your prostate, dulling your brain, weakening your immune system, and stealing your sense of self, one silent day at a time. I'm Dr. James, a urologist and senior men's health expert with more than 30 years of experience helping men across the country restore their strength, dignity, and vitality, often by reawakening a part of their life they thought was gone forever. This subject is deeply personal for many men, but ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It just makes the consequences more invisible and more dangerous. Most men believe masturbation is something you grow out of, that at a certain age it's childish or unnecessary. But what if I told you that stopping could accelerate aging, that by avoiding touch you're quietly giving your body permission to shut down? You might be trading short-term modesty for long-term suffering. In this episode, I'll walk you through 10 powerful ways that giving up self-stimulation affects your body, from prostate problems, memory loss, and depression, to muscle decline, testosterone drops, and even a weakened immune response. These aren't random side effects. They're biological signals your body is begging you not to ignore. And at the end, I'll show you exactly how to reconnect, with dignity, with science, and with zero shame. But first, we need to talk about the very first thing that starts to fail, and most men don't even realize it's happening. Before we begin, if you haven't already subscribed, take a moment to hit that button and turn on the bell, so you never miss another vital health message that could change the way you age. And if this topic resonates with you, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your feedback helps me craft content that truly supports your health, dignity, and well-being. Let's start with the first and perhaps most overlooked consequence, one that affects millions of men silently. What happens to your prostate and urinary health when you stop masturbating? This isn't about desire, it's about function. And if you've been waking up several times a night to urinate, feeling pressure in your lower abdomen, or noticing a weaker stream, this may already be happening inside your body. Let me explain. 1. Prostate and urinary health decline. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a man named George. He was 73, sharp as ever, still walking his dog every morning and volunteering at the local library. But he sat in my office one afternoon looking tired, really tired. He said, "Doc, I don't understand. I'm up 5, sometimes 6 times a night to pee. I haven't had a full night's sleep in months." At first, we ruled out the usual suspects: diet, bladder infections, medications. But something else stood out when I asked him gently about his personal habits. He hesitated, then chuckled a little. "That part of me," he said, "has been retired for a long time." That's when I knew. What George was experiencing wasn't just an overactive bladder, it was a classic case of an understimulated prostate. You see, the prostate is not just a passive gland, it's an active organ that requires regular stimulation to stay healthy. When a man stops masturbating or ejaculating altogether, especially later in life, the fluid produced by the prostate has nowhere to go. It builds up, it stagnates. And that stagnant fluid creates the perfect environment for inflammation, swelling, and eventually a condition we call benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH. That pressure inside the prostate can start to press against the urethra, making urination harder, weaker, or more frequent. Over time, it can lead to chronic discomfort, disrupted sleep, bladder infections, and in more severe cases, catheterization or even surgery. What startled George even more was this: Men who ejaculate regularly, at least 21 times a month according to large studies, have a significantly lower risk of developing prostate cancer. That statistic isn't about indulgence. It's about biology. Ejaculation is how the prostate clears itself out. It's maintenance. It's protection. George had no idea, and frankly, most men don't. We're never told that something as private as self-pleasure could have such real, long-term consequences. But once he understood what was happening, he made a simple change, and within weeks, the nightly bathroom trips began to ease. So no, masturbation in older age isn't unnecessary. It's not immature. It's one of the most natural ways to support one of the most vital organs in your body. But what if the issue doesn't stop at your prostate? What if quitting this habit is also draining your ability to think clearly, focus, and remember things that once came so easily? Let's take a closer look at how giving up self-stimulation can quietly cloud your mind. 2. Cognitive fog and mental dullness. There was a moment with one of my longtime patients, David, that stayed with me for years. He was 68, recently retired, and came in not because of any pain or urgent condition, but because, as he put it, I'm starting to feel like a dimmer version of myself. That sentence hit me. He wasn't sick. He wasn't depressed, but something was clearly off. He told me he used to be razor sharp, managing a team, solving problems in seconds, remembering every name in a crowded room. But now, he'd walk into the kitchen and forget why. He'd lose his train of thought mid-conversation, and even reading the morning paper took more effort than it should. Most people would chalk it up to aging, but as I always say, just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. When I gently asked him about his intimacy habits, whether he's still engaged in any kind of self-pleasure, he looked surprised. I haven't done that in years, he said, almost like it was something that didn't even occur to him anymore. And that right there was the missing link. You see, sexual activity isn't just about desire, it's about brain chemistry. When you engage in self-stimulation, your brain releases a potent cocktail of chemicals. Dopamine for motivation and focus, serotonin for emotional balance, oxytocin for connection, and endorphins to lift your mood. These are the same neurochemicals that support memory, protect neural pathways, and improve mental clarity. They are not optional, they are essential. When men stop masturbating for long stretches, their brains begin to miss that chemical nourishment. The lights dim little by little. You might forget names more often, feel less enthusiastic, struggle to stay present. It doesn't happen all at once, but over time that mental edge you once took for granted starts to slip away. David began reconnecting with his body in a simple, respectful way. No shame, no rush, just gentle awareness and touch. Within a month, he told me his mind felt crisper, like he could finally hold on to thoughts again without losing them halfway through. That's not magic. It's physiology. You were never meant to lose your sharpness. And sometimes the path back to clarity doesn't begin in your head, it starts with your body. But mental fog is only part of the equation. What happens when your emotional world begins to flatten out too? When joy, connection, and meaning feel far away and you can't quite explain why? The answer may be more physical than you think. 3. Emotional numbness and depression. I once sat across from a man named Richard, a retired architect in his early 70s. He had come in for a routine checkup, but as we spoke, he suddenly paused and said, "Doc, I don't feel much of anything these days. Not sad, not happy, just blank." He looked down when he said it as if it were something to be ashamed of, but I could tell that what he was really feeling was lost. disconnected, not from the world, but from himself. That kind of emotional flatness is something I've seen more and more in men after 60. And here's the surprising truth. It often has less to do with grief, life changes, or aging, and more to do with something no one talks about. When a man stops masturbating, he's not just giving up sexual pleasure. He's cutting off one of his body's most reliable emotional regulators. You see, during climax, your brain releases a powerful surge of neurochemicals. Oxytocin, endorphins, dopamine, all designed to elevate your mood, reduce anxiety, and create a sense of emotional release and grounding. These chemicals don't just make you feel good in the moment. They stabilize your emotional baseline. They help you cope, breathe easier, and feel connected to life, even if you're alone. When this source of emotional release disappears, especially over months or years, men often find themselves withdrawing, not just from intimacy, but from life. They lose interest in hobbies. They become more irritable. They stop calling friends. Sleep changes. Appetite fluctuates. And yet many don't even realize that what they're feeling is low-grade depression. They just think, maybe this is what getting older feels like. I told Richard what I'm telling you now. Your emotional system still works, it's just been unplugged. When he began gently reconnecting with his body, without shame, without pressure, something shifted. He told me I didn't just feel good, I felt real again, like I came back into my own skin. That's not psychology, that's chemistry. That's biology, remembering how to feel. And if the emotional side of you has felt muted or hollow lately, this may be a deeper signal. But it doesn't stop there, because when you lose that emotional rhythm, another system quietly starts to fail, and this one affects your energy, your memory, your immune response, and even your risk for disease. Let's talk about what happens when sleep, the most vital healing force you have, begins to slip away. 4. Reduced sleep quality and immune weakness. Not long ago, a man named Charles came to see me. He was 69, still fit, still sharp, but something was wearing him down. I go to bed exhausted, he said, but I wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning like someone flipped a switch. Then I just lay there, thinking, staring, waiting for the sun. He looked worn out, like he'd been running a silent marathon with no finish line. And what hit me most was the resignation in his voice, as if poor sleep was just his new normal. We ran the usual tests. No sleep apnea, no major stressors, no meds causing interference. But when I asked about his personal habits, his eyes drifted down. It's been years since I've touched that part of myself, he said quietly. That moment of honesty told me everything. What many people don't realize is that masturbation, especially in older adults, plays a direct role in promoting deep, restorative sleep. During climax, the body releases a cascade of calming chemicals, prolactin, oxytocin, endorphins, all of which help lower cortisol levels, relax the muscles, slow the heart rate, and ease the nervous system into a state of rest. This isn't hearsay, it's biochemistry. When that natural release is absent for weeks, months, or even years, the body's internal sleep mechanism can become disrupted. Instead of winding down, your mind keeps racing. Your muscles stay tense. Your heart doesn't fully settle. And sleep, true healing sleep, becomes harder and harder to come by. Charles didn't need a prescription. He needed permission. Permission to reconnect with his own body in a way that supported, not shamed, his well-being. Within a month, his sleep had improved. It's not just that I fall asleep easier, he told me. I wake up actually feeling rested. I didn't realize how long it had been since I felt that. And the effects go far beyond just sleep. Because once rest returns, something else happens too. Your immune system wakes back up. Your body starts healing faster, resisting illness, rebuilding strength. All of that starts with a few quiet, intentional moments of self-care. But what if this loss of connection doesn't just affect your sleep or your immunity, but the very foundation your body stands on? What happens when the muscles that hold you up begin to weaken silently without warning? Let's explore what starts to fail when intimacy fades from your daily life. 5. Weakening of the pelvic floor and loss of control. A man named Tom came into my office a few years back, a retired firefighter in his early 70s. He was strong in presence, had lived a full life, and still carried that quiet pride of someone who'd served others for decades. But he looked uneasy that day. "Doc," he said, "I've been having trouble holding it in. Sometimes I leak a little when I laugh or sneeze, and lately my hips and lower back ache when I stand too long. It feels like my foundation is falling apart." What Tom was describing wasn't just aging, it was something I see far more often than most people realize. His pelvic floor, the network of muscles that supports the bladder, bowel, and sexual organs, was weakening, and he wasn't alone. What many men don't know is that regular sexual stimulation, including masturbation, is one of the simplest, most natural ways to keep those pelvic floor muscles active and engaged. During arousal and orgasm, the pelvic floor contracts rhythmically, stimulating circulation, strengthening tissue, and maintaining coordination between muscle and nerve. It's not just about performance, it's about preservation. When that stimulation disappears, those muscles start to atrophy. Blood flow slows. Nerves become less responsive. The support system that keeps your lower body functioning smoothly begins to fail. That can mean more trips to the bathroom, less bladder control, difficulty with gas, even discomfort just standing or walking. For men like Tom, who once prided themselves on physical resilience, this shift feels like a betrayal. But it's not irreversible. Once we address the root of the issue, not just treating symptoms, but restoring that crucial, overlooked connection to his body, he started to rebuild strength. His posture improved, his confidence returned. He told me, "I feel like I'm standing tall again, not just physically, but in who I am." You don't have to surrender to that slow collapse. With a bit of knowledge and the right kind of engagement, your body can remember how to support you. But here's where things take an even more personal turn, because losing strength is one thing, but losing your masculine energy, your drive, your very chemistry, that's a different kind of threat. And it often begins with one overlooked hormone that slowly disappears when intimacy fades. Let's talk about what happens to your testosterone. 6. Drop in testosterone and masculine energy. I remember a quiet moment with a patient named Frank. He was 75, lean and disciplined, the kind of man who never missed a morning walk or a healthy meal. But as we sat across from each other, he admitted something that surprised me. "Doc," he said, "I just don't feel like a man anymore. I'm tired all the time, I've lost my spark. I don't even recognize the guy in the mirror." His lab showed what I suspected. His testosterone levels had taken a deep dip. But what stood out wasn't just the number, it was the way he felt disconnected from his own identity. Testosterone isn't just about libido, it's about drive. It fuels energy, motivation, mental sharpness, confidence, and a deep sense of vitality that goes beyond the physical. As men age, a slow decline in testosterone is expected, but what most don't know is that a complete absence of sexual activity, especially self-stimulation, can cause that drop to accelerate. You see, regular arousal and ejaculation help maintain hormonal rhythms. It signals to the body that you're still engaged, still alive in a vital physical way. When that signal goes silent, the body begins to pull back. It reduces production. And over time, the man you once were, decisive, energetic, steady, starts to fade. Frank hadn't touched himself in years, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't think it mattered anymore. Once we reframed the conversation, not as indulgence, but as a form of hormone health, of reconnecting with his own biology, he took small steps to return to that rhythm. Months later, he sat straighter. His voice carried more weight. "I'm back," he said, half laughing. "Not 20 again, but I finally feel like myself." This isn't about chasing youth, it's about preserving identity. Testosterone loss isn't always loud. Sometimes it just shows up as a man who stops caring. But when you engage with your body, even in private, you send a message back to your chemistry. I'm still here. But what if the cost isn't just hormonal? What if the loss of touch goes deeper, beyond muscles, beyond hormones, into the very part of you that makes life feel worth living? What happens when a man stops feeling like he belongs in his own skin? Let's talk about what's really at stake when you begin to lose your sense of ownership over your body. 7. Loss of body ownership and self-worth. One of the most emotional conversations I've ever had was with a man named Walter, a retired high school principal. He was 78, articulate, once full of presence and conviction, but that day he seemed smaller somehow. As we talked, he looked down and said quietly, "I don't feel like I live in this body anymore, Doc. I just exist in it." That sentence broke something open. I've heard versions of it from many men over the years, and often the story behind it isn't about illness or pain. It's about something much more subtle, a slow, silent detachment from their own body. And it almost always begins with touch, or more specifically, the absence of it. When you stop connecting with your body, when you stop touching it, exploring it, honoring it, you begin to lose a sense of ownership. It becomes something separate from you. You stop looking in the mirror. You stop noticing how you feel. You stop taking care of yourself with the same intention. What follows isn't just physical, it's emotional erosion. A quiet belief that maybe your time has passed, that maybe your body isn't worthy of love, attention, or even presence anymore. Walter hadn't touched himself in over a decade. He said it felt silly at his age. But I asked him gently, would you ever tell someone their hands weren't worth washing, their face not worth shaving? He smiled at that, because he knew I wasn't talking about sex, I was talking about dignity. When he began reconnecting, not with fantasy, but with his own presence, his posture changed, his voice returned. He told me, it's not even the act itself, it's the reminder that this body is still mine, that I still matter. And that's the truth. Masturbation in later life isn't about clinging to who you were. It's about respecting who you still are. It's a moment where you say to yourself, I'm still here and I'm still worth caring for. But there's another layer to this. Because once that internal disconnect takes hold, it doesn't always stay private. In fact, it often begins to shape how we engage, or no longer engage, with the world around us. And that's when loneliness moves in, not just as a feeling, but as a way of life. Let's talk about how the absence of self-touch can slowly close the door on the connections we need most. 8. Increase loneliness and social withdrawal. A few years ago, I met a man named Joseph at a follow-up appointment. He'd lost his wife 2 years earlier and had been living alone ever since. On paper, he was doing fine, no major health problems, blood pressure under control, still walking a few times a week. But there was a heaviness about him. He looked me in the eye and said, I don't really talk to people much anymore. I just don't see the point. That kind of quiet isolation doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, in silence. First, it's skipping social events. Then it's turning down phone calls. Then it's eating dinner in front of the TV every night in complete silence. What many don't realize is that this emotional withdrawal often follows a deeper, more physical one, the kind that happens when a man no longer connects with his own body. When you stop touching yourself, you're not just giving up a habit. You're disconnecting from one of the core ways your body processes and releases feelings. Masturbation doesn't just satisfy desire, it stimulates oxytocin and dopamine, the very chemicals that make us feel bonded, open, and emotionally safe. It reminds your nervous system what connection feels like, even if you're alone. Without that small but powerful release, a man can begin to emotionally shut down. He becomes more guarded, less expressive, more hesitant to open up to others. Over time, it feels easier to be alone, not because he prefers it, but because something inside him has gone dim. Joseph hadn't touched himself in nearly 3 years. He said it felt pointless without a partner. But when I encouraged him to approach it not as pleasure, but as a small act of reconnection, a physical reminder that he was still here, still deserving of attention, he began to change. A month later, he told me he'd started meeting a friend for coffee once a week. "I don't say much," he admitted, "but I show up. That's something, right?" And I told him, yes, that's everything. Because touch, even solitary touch, has the power to reopen a man to the world, to remind him that he's still part of it, that he's still wanted in it. But as loneliness softens your emotional edges, there's something else happening below the surface, something physical and far more dangerous. It's not just your social muscles that weaken, it's your actual muscles, your circulation, your strength. Let's look at how giving up self-stimulation can slowly drain your physical vitality from the inside out. 9. Circulation and muscle loss. Not long ago, a patient named Bill came in for what he called general stiffness. He was 71, a former mechanic, hand-strong from years of work, but lately he said he felt heavy and sluggish. Walking up the stairs winded him. Standing for too long made his legs ache. He assumed it was just aging. But as I listened, something stood out. This wasn't just wear and tear. This was deeper. It was systemic. When I asked him about his routines, both physical and personal, he shrugged. "I don't really do much anymore, Doc, and no, I haven't, in a long time." There was shame in his voice, like it was something silly to admit at his age. But what he didn't realize is that his lack of self-stimulation wasn't just affecting his mind or his hormones. It was directly impacting his circulation and, by extension, his muscles. You see, during arousal and orgasm, the body sends powerful surges of blood throughout the pelvic region and lower limbs. That process keeps the vascular system awake, the tissues oxygenated, the muscles engaged. Without that stimulation, circulation slows. Blood flow becomes sluggish. Muscles don't get the nutrients they need. And over time, you begin to feel it. In your legs, your hips, your core. It's not just about walking slower or getting tired more easily. It's about what those changes lead to. More sitting, more resting, more avoiding physical activity. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing, and eventually men like Bill lose not just strength, but independence. They become afraid to go out, unsure if their body will keep up. And what started as skipping self-pleasure now shows up as physical decline. I encourage Bill to gently reconnect with his body, not with pressure or shame, but with curiosity and kindness. A few months later, he walked into my office with a spark in his step. "You were right," he said. "It's like something woke up again, not just my legs, me." And that's the point. Our bodies are meant to move. They're meant to feel. And when we ignore that, we lose more than just muscle. We lose momentum. But even as circulation declines and strength fades, there's a deeper risk brewing in silence. One that leaves you vulnerable in a way most men never expect. Because the next consequence isn't just about how you move, it's about how you fight off illness. And it all starts with what's flowing or not flowing through your bloodstream. Let's talk about immunity. 10. Immune system weakening. A few winters ago, a man named Leonard came into my office looking unusually drained. He was 67, normally full of dry humor and energy, but this time he looked pale, thin, and tired. "Doc, every little cold knocks me down for weeks," he said. "I used to bounce back in 2 days. Now it's like my body just gives up." We checked his labs, no serious flags. His diet was reasonable, his medications hadn't changed, and he was still walking a bit every day, but something wasn't right. So as always, I asked him something few doctors ever do. "Have you been intimate with yourself at all lately?" He looked almost embarrassed. "Not for a long time," he said, shaking his head. "I figured I didn't need that anymore." But here's the thing. He did. We all do. What Leonard didn't realize, and what most men over 60 have never been told, is that sexual release, even alone, plays a powerful role in keeping the immune system sharp. During climax, the body releases not only feel-good chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin, but also triggers a rise in immunoglobulin A, a key antibody that helps protect against viruses, bacteria, and chronic inflammation. It's your body's natural signal that all systems are active and aligned, that the body is worth defending. But when that signal goes quiet for too long, the immune response softens, recovery slows, inflammation lingers, and suddenly little illnesses feel like big setbacks. Cuts take longer to heal, colds hang on for weeks, energy fades. Leonard wasn't getting sick because of one bad habit or bad luck. His immune system had simply stopped receiving one of the messages it used to rely on. Once he began gently restoring that connection, not daily, not obsessively, just consistently, his body began to respond. By spring, he was noticeably stronger. "I didn't think something so small could matter so much," he said, "but it does." Your body is always listening, and when you treat it like it's still worth fighting for, it often returns the favor in ways you can feel. But now that we've explored what's been lost, your strength, your sleep, your identity, the real question becomes, how do you take it back? How do you restore connection, confidence, and vitality even after years of silence? In the final moments, let's bring it all together and talk about what it means to reclaim your body, your health, and your life.